Hi. Our topic for today is about the politics around corn between United States of America and India, between Trump and Modi. So first, let's look at who's producing corn in the world and who's buying it. So this is actually not a big thing. Anyone who can read Wikipedia can tell that America is the highest or the largest producer of corn in the world, followed by China and of course Brazil. In 2024 alone, right, there are about 1.5 billion metric tons of corn that was produced worldwide. US alone contributed about 400 million metric tons, followed by China with about 300 million metric tons. So if you put all this into perspective, right, US has about a 30% global market share in corn production, and China has about 24%, Brazil has about 11%. And don't get me wrong, India also contributes to the corn market. It has about 3% of market share, right, which is approximately about 45 million metric tons. That makes India the fifth largest producer of corn in the world, right? Now, let's see what is required to produce corn and who has it, right? In simple terms, corn is a cold intolerant fruit or vegetable, which means that it requires warm and temperate climate conditions and soil conditions for it to grow and harvest, right? If the soil is cold or is wet, or if there is more moisture in the air, of course, then it fails to grow. It needs exposure to sunlight about 10 hours every day. I mean, when I say sunlight, I'm saying that it's direct sunlight, direct exposure to sunlight for about 10 hours each day. So for the last few thousand years, right, the corn or the maize-based food production, the eating habits, the cultural identity around maize and corn was highly prominent and spread across the American regions, especially the central regions. So over a period of time, right, US was able to create something called as the Corn Belt. And with the support of the government, the farmers, they were able to harvest more farming. We were able to do more farming. They were able to harvest more corn, and there was more technology. The bioengineering also improved the harvesting models, and there was modern infrastructure, like there was very well established rail and road connectivity, and of course there was a very strong government-backed financial support and insurance facilities to the farmers, etc. Right? So overall, all these things put together, US has is the largest producer of corn in the world. Now, let's look at the recent comments made by the US Commerce Secretary, Mr. Howard Lutnick, right? So he was throwing a sarcastic comment that India brags about having 1.4 billion people, but won't buy one bushel of corn from US. So fine, he has made the statement very loud and clear that they have a lot of corn to sell, and it's readily available, right? But they never made a statement that if India is going to buy the corn from US, that is going to reduce the tariffs, right? So that kind of conversation probably never happened and will never come out, right? Has never come out until now. So I don't know if something like that happened, right? I'm not saying that something like that did not happen. These things don't come out into public media. Only the one that would create an hypocrisy or conspiracy, those kind of things will come out in the media. But I don't know if something like that happened, right? India will not buy the corn from US. It's very simple, right? So let me try to make this more simpler, right? To understand it, let's try to understand what is happening with the crude oil industry and how India is benefiting from its home run ethanol program, right? So petrol is produced from crude oil, correct? If the crude oil price increases, the price of petrol in India also increases, right? If you blend 20% of petrol with ethanol, then these fluctuations in the fuel prices, the crude oil prices, will have a slightly lesser impact to India, because you have 20% of petrol with ethanol. It's blended with ethanol. Plus, you also get to reduce carbon emissions, reduce the carbon footprint, because it's biofuel primarily generated from sugarcane or corn. In this way, you also reduce the impact of climate change. Now, India has a lot of sugarcane, and it requires to continue exporting the sugarcane and the sugar because of the growing demands of sugar from India. So the other option for India is to produce ethanol using corn. Corn is good. Ethanol is good for ethanol production, and India produces corn. But it's not enough to meet the production of corn. It's not really enough to meet the oil demands, the food security demands, and of course there is a lot of poultry and cattle feed demands in the country, right? So it is not sufficient for that. So India imports corn, right? So if you notice the types of needs or demands that is there in India with respect to corn, it is about the corn that is naturally produced, not genetically modified. So if you remember earlier in this video, we mentioned that US made advancements in the corn bioengineering and was able to produce large quantities of genetically modified corn, right? So US produces GM corn, which is genetically modified corn, and India needs non-GM corn, which is surprisingly produced in Europe, especially Ukraine, right? Moreover, American corn may be cheap, but not cheap to India because of the 50% tariffs. So it's not even at a competitive price to attract India. So why will India buy US corn? Why? I'll leave you with an anonymous quote. If you cannot sell corn, try making a popcorn. Someone for sure will buy it because entertainment is always on sale. With that, I take leave. Thank you, and do subscribe to this particular video. Thank you. Bye.